Welcome back to another edition of Through the Smoke, a Miami Hurricanes football and recruiting podcast here on the 24/7 Sports Network. David Lake, joined as always by Gabby Urrutia. We're here to preview the Miami-Louisville game. Doing one pod this week because it's a Friday game. So recording this on Wednesday, we'll release this on Thursday. But wanted to share our thoughts on Louisville. Also provide a little bit tidbits on the bye week recruiting developments. So we'll dive into that here. Before we jump into the topics, let's highlight two of our sponsors, right? Starting with Canes Connection. It's crucial that everyone who listens to this podcast, and I know there's a lot of people who listen to this podcast, go support Canes Connection in whatever way you can at canesconnection.com. It's critical for Miami to have those resources to be effective in talent acquisition. Everyone loves it when their program flips prospects down the stretch. In order for Miami to do that, they need your support at Canes Connection. So go to canesconnection.com and do that. Also want to highlight our guy, Nick Musarino. If you've been injured in a slip and fall accident, boating accident, trucking accident, Uber accident, Lyft accident, any type of car accident, Nick Musarino is the personal injury attorney you should contact. He's the guy I would go to in any of these situations at 561-960-9870 or check out his website at flinjury.law. Nick also just likes talking Canes, so give him a call. He'll talk some Canes with you as well. Massive fan. All right, Gabby. Before we dive into Miami Louisville talk, it's worth highlighting some of the recruiting buzz developments that took place during the bye week last week. Miami had their second bye week of the year last week, and that afforded the opportunity for the staff to get out on the road and go check out prospects they either have committed or want to add to the class, flip to the class, etc. So I want to give you the floor to give us five names or five situations that you want to highlight from last week's recruiting developments. So the floor is yours.
Yeah, I think, I mean, we know that Miami is still extremely engaged with some of these class of 2026 prospects, right? Already 24 commits in the class were, what, David, about 45 days from National Signing Day, roughly.
Yes.
So we're down like the final stretch, sort of. So and there's still a lot that Miami wants to do. Like you look at the board versus what they have committed, and I am curious to see what this class size ends up being. I know, I guess that's not really what we're talking about right now, but I think it's just interesting how much Miami is still focusing on the 2026 class while also
Because of
doing
the
their due diligence in
105, right?
27 and beyond. Right, because of the 105, right? It seems like this could be a bigger, I think it's fair to expect a bigger class than normal. I think the days of 25 men class, 25, 26 is probably over. I wouldn't be surprised if this thing gets into the 30 range if it's the right types of pieces. Yeah, Miami's still doing a lot of work there. Just going back to the bye week and the recruiting specifically, some of the more interesting stops that I think are worth highlighting. Jason Taylor, Miami's defensive ends coach, was at Buford, Georgia, in the Atlanta area, checking in on two top defensive line targets. Bryce Perry Wright is five-star, committed to Texas A&M. He's someone that Miami's been heavily engaged with. They're big fans of what they've seen from him as a senior. We've talked about how much they value what they see on tape in the final high school season. Bryce Perry Wright's definitely someone they're still engaged with. So he's on that team. And then Dre Quinn is a new edge rusher decommitted from Clemson recently because he kind of wanted to take visits. We know that Clemson doesn't really allow their committed players to take visits. So I think he went to see Mississippi State. I think he's been to Texas, Tennessee, Ohio State's another school involved. Miami is definitely a school to watch. So, that's kind of a new name for Miami fans to track is Dre Quinn. He's a 6'4", around 230-pound edge rusher. Transferred into Buford as a senior and has kind of surged up a ton of boards. So I think both those situations are worth tracking. I think just the sense that I get is that Miami's probably the biggest threat to Texas A&M for Bryce Perry Wright. Not saying that they're going to flip him, but I think if there is a school who can, it's Miami. I think he's still really thinking about the Canes with just all the success that they're having on defense and just how hard they've been recruiting him. So Bryce Perry Wright is one to continue to track. Drake Quinn is another one. Hasn't been down to Miami yet, but I'm of the understanding that he will. I believe for the Stanford game is when that visit's set for. So he's another one that should come down and check out the Canes. He's a big one. Kind of sticking in the Atlanta area, safety Blake Stewart is one that Miami went to go see on Friday night. He is probably the top realistic safety target on the table right now. He's another one that's committed to Clemson. That's a really interesting situation. Miami, kind of put a lot of eggs into that basket over the summer. It kind of came down to Clemson and Miami at the finish line. I think Clemson was kind of always where, his heart was. That's ultimately who won out in the summer months. But Miami's kind of continued to press and hit all the right buttons there. Zach Etheridge was in the Atlanta area to watch him play Friday night, as I mentioned. And I believe that was his first game back. I think he was dealing with some injury, came back. And feedback I got from that trip was that Blake Stewart was really, really good. I think this is a situation that I think Miami fans need to keep a really close eye on, David, is this Blake Stewart situation. Again, with the Clemson commits, it's always dicey because getting them on campus is tough, but Miami's been working this one really, really hard. And truthfully, and I wrote this earlier on the week on the site, I think that this is someone that if I were doing a mock class right now, he would be on it. Just because I think that there's a very real possibility that Miami's able to flip him. Just when you consider Clemson's struggles and just how much Miami's kind of pouring into this. Safety is such a big priority. Blake Stewart is a prime candidate, I think, to kind of end up in Miami's class. So I think that's definitely an interesting one. Corey Heatherman, talking about just kind of defensive prospects still. I feel like I don't know if this is fair to say, David. I don't know if you'd push back on this. I feel like there's like one true linebacker in Miami's class. Jordan Campbell's kind of playing off the edge a lot for Miami Northwestern. So Justin Edwards is Miami's lone linebacker commit. Seems like Corey Heatherman's kind of circled a new linebacker target on the board. That's Karsten Bush out of the Louisville, Kentucky area. He's committed to Louisville, but 6'3", 230 pounds. You kind of scroll through his feed and you see some of the videos of him warming up and stuff, David. He looks like a big dude. I think that that's an interesting one. Corey Heatherman was out in the Derby City watching Karsten Bush, last week. I think he went over there at some point last week, and I think that that's an interesting sort of development for Miami as far as just a potential linebacker target that I think is kind of coming up the ranks. And Miami didn't go see him, or maybe they did. I just don't know about it. But I think another situation I just want to highlight in general, David, is Milan Paris, the 6'5" 5.5", 200 or so pound wide receiver, former Iowa State commit, kind of reopened things up after he took an official visit to Oklahoma. Miami's kind of next up as far as just like, getting him on campus. I believe he's also coming in for the Stanford game. I think that there is, first of all, I think Miami just really likes this prospect. Like, I think Miami really likes him. Again, big outside wide receiver. We know they're kind of looking for that type. I think Milan Paris is someone that they've kind of really just circled on the board. From what I have gathered, Miami feels like there is a real shot in this recruitment. Again, you got Oregon in there as well, so there's some big kind of national players in this recruitment. But I think when Miami gets him down, if that visit goes well, I think that there is a chance that this could potentially fall Miami's way. So I think that's another one. If I'm bringing five names to the table, David, I think those five are a few situations that I'm kind of closely tracking right now.
Let me put you on the spot here too, and just ask you, everyone wants to know, right? Relative to the success of the season, how is it going to help Miami in this 2026 cycle in recruiting? Miami, last I think I looked before we started recording, Miami's 11th, I believe, class ranking. Do you think Miami's going to be able to get inside the top 10 in the recruiting rankings when all is said and done?
Yeah, I lost you there for a second, but it sounds like you asked me if I think they're going to be a top 10 class.
Yeah.
I think that's definitely on the table. I would probably project it if I were, just kind of shooting my shot like, hey, this is where I think this is going. I think top 10, I think they can maybe even dive a little bit further into that. Again, it's hard to predict just because of this era that we're in, but just given the success on the field and I think what's different too is you kind of have 2 years now of proven concept as far as just being on the field. Last year obviously didn't end the way anyone wanted it to, but just you look back and
Yeah.
Miami had a
10
10-win
wins.
season, and now Miami's kind of putting together another strong season where it looks like they're a legit college football playoff contender. I mean, Miami's clearly building something, and it wasn't just a one-year flash in the pan. It's something that looks like it could potentially be sustainable. So I think that there's going to be buy-in from the prospects when it's all said and done. And yeah, we're just sitting here in mid-October right now. There's still so much time, and I know people may be clamoring for wanting the flips now. I think that they're going to start to come, and I think when it's kind of time when this thing's all wrapped up, especially as we get closer to signing day, when things really kind of start moving. Obviously, considering where Miami's at now, but if they're still on this trajectory at that point, they're going to have a lot of momentum to be able to,
Yeah.
especially at the finish line when things really get dicey, to start making some big pushes, big moves, and start, kind of positioning themselves to close. I think that's when we'll really know. But I personally think that it's going to end up being at least a top 10 class.
In a perfect world, Miami would like to close strong at what position groups?
For me, I think it's the defensive line as a whole. We obviously got the edges and the defensive linemen, but to me, it's just across the board at the defensive line. I think we're seeing now just a value of just having game wreckers on the defensive line. I think especially on the ends. So right now you got a Shari Charles, who is a highly productive type of edge rusher, and then along the interior defensive line, I think that there's more. I think for where Miami's going and where it's been, I think it's fair to elevate the bar, right? To raise the standard of what the way they should be recruiting the interior defensive line. I think if we're calling it how we see it, David, Dante Simpson has been a good, he's been promising early on, but I think over the last two recruiting cycles, I think that's one position you can look at and be like, hey, I just don't think that
Yeah.
that's good enough. And so I think Miami wants to really elevate the defensive line. You see it with the way they're recruiting. They're recruiting a lot of top guys, and they're just recruiting a large number of players. I think internally, I think they probably see it as like this is a position we need to really capitalize on this cycle. So I wouldn't be surprised if they really end up having some numbers towards this defensive line class, adding numbers towards this defensive line class. I think that's one. I think safety is another one too. And Bryce Fitzgerald has been a positive development as far as just being a true freshman impact player, but there is not a lot of depth that's been recruited at that position over the past couple years. I think you need to continue to throw numbers at it. That's why I think getting a Blake Stewart's important with a Cortez Redding you already have signed. If you're able to flip a guy like Justice Fitzpatrick, who I think will eventually transition to safety, whether it's at Miami or if it's at Georgia, I think that's more of what he's naturally feeling at. I think even like a Kenton Dobson, who Miami has committed, who I think is probably, I think right now it's trending towards him sticking rather than him flipping to North Carolina. I think he has kind of some safety flexibility too. So he's someone that maybe you throw back there and see what it looks like early on in his career. Like I think safety is a position where I think they need to continue to kind of stack guys. And I don't hate the idea of them just going after a big, tall, like towering outside wide receiver because I don't think there's really much of that truly on the roster. Josh Moore's like a 6'4", 215, but I don't think they have like a 6'5", 6'6" type of guy where and you're seeing those guys be successful at the college level. So a couple interesting positions, but those I think the defensive line, if I had to pick one, was the one I would prioritize most.
All right. Great stuff as always. Go subscribe to InsideTheU.com and you can, on the daily, catch up with Gabby's recruiting coverage. All right, let's dive into this game preview. Of course, Louisville visiting number 2 Miami this Friday night at Hard Rock Stadium. It's a 7 p.m. kick. This is the fourth primetime matchup for the Hurricanes this season. This game will be on ESPN. And of course, this is the game also known as the Battle for the Schnellenberger Trophy, which, is a bronzed statue of Howard Schnellenberger's boots, former head coach of both programs. So kind of a cool college football trophy there at stake in this game. We'll start with injury talk. And, from both these teams are coming off bye weeks. So it's going to be interesting to find out what each team's ACC injury report looks like on Thursday night when that is released at 8 o'clock. But from a Miami standpoint, sounds like Jordan Lyle, JoJo Trader are 100% good to go, full goes. Just a matter of getting back into the rotation, I think, for both those players. And then, making plays when those opportunities present themselves. For me, again, this isn't based off anything I've heard or anything like that, but that Florida State game, Ahmad Moten, and he returned to the game, but Ahmad Moten is definitely playing through like some sort of shoulder injury. He went down at one point, I believe in the first half of that Florida State game. He did return to the game, but he's going to have to continue to tough out through some sort of shoulder deal. And, with 7 straight games, in 7 weeks coming up, that's going to be something to monitor for Miami defensively moving forward. Louisville, they've been really banged up at running backs. Their top 3 running backs have been injured, over the past month or so. Most notably Isaac Brown, who's one of their star players on offense. It sounds like he's kind of dealing with a left ankle. Duke Watson, who's a productive backup, good number 2 back, he has been dealing with a right ankle issue. And it has, you could tell just by watching them, it has limited uh, their effectiveness. And also, you can tell Jeff Brom is leaning more into the passing phase of the offense, and he would much prefer to be balanced on offense, but he knows he can't really lean on those guys right now as or in the past as they were banged up. So it'll be interesting to see what a bye week means for the recovery of those guys. The other notable injury I think to touch on with Louisville, and he's been injured for a few games now, but linebacker Stanquan Clark, who is a Miami native, he is a athletic linebacker that was on a nice trajectory. This was supposed to be like a big, important year for him, and unfortunately, he sustained, I believe, a serious knee injury, so he's out for the year. So hopefully he recovers well. But he is a guy that, Louisville has to replace because of the athleticism he has at linebacker. Miami leads the all-time series between these two teams, 12-4-1. Miami won, of course, last year's game up at Louisville. It was a shootout, 52-45. Louisville won the last game at Hard Rock 2 years ago, back in 2023, 38-31. Since the year 2000, this series is tied up at 4-4. Louisville this season, Louisville is 4-1, and they are 1-1 in ACC play. They have wins over Eastern Kentucky, James Madison, Bowling Green, and Pitt. They are coming off a loss to Virginia in overtime, and they have had a bye week this past weekend, just like Miami, to prepare for this game. Both games against the ACC opponents, so against, the win against Pittsburgh and the loss to Virginia, they were both one-score games. I think overall it was fair that they went 1-1 in these games. You could argue maybe they should have lost the Pitt game and maybe they should have won the Virginia game, but I think 1-1 as a result in those 2 games is fair. Definitely some up and down performances overall from Louisville in both those games. Nothing consistent over the course of a game. So they have a lot of kinks to work out still here in conference play. Their head coach is Jeff Brom. He, of course, played at Louisville, was a quarterback 1989 to 93, played in the NFL as a journeyman backup, with San Diego, Washington, San Francisco, Tampa Bay, Denver, also played in the XFL, worked as a quarterback coach at Louisville and FAU, and then OC at UAB and Western Kentucky. Got his first head coaching opportunity at Western Kentucky, then went to Purdue, and now at Louisville. He's done a nice job. Uh, his high watermark seasons at each one of those stops. He won 12 games at Western Kentucky in 2015. He went 9-4 at Purdue in 2021. And then he went 10-4 at Louisville in 2023. That team played in the ACC championship game. Kind of similar to Mario Cristobal as, in the mold of, being a former player who's a perfect fit for that program. Jeff Brom is a Louisville guy, worked his way up the coaching ranks, and he's kind of now at one of his dream jobs. And, what makes him so good just in general, he is it's essentially like having an NFL level play caller at the college level. He's very good at dialing up and play designs that use misdirection. He does a nice job of building a pass game off the run game, and he utilizes every skill position group in the passing game. He's got new wrinkles from week to week that he installs. There's a lot of guys who get it done as play callers that uh, there's not a lot of guys I feel like in college that can get it done as play callers in the NFL. And he is one of these. He is one of the college play callers that I think could legitimately get it done at the NFL level. Steve Sarkisian is another one. Uh, so he's impressive in that regard. His OC is, Jeff is the play caller, but his OC is his brother, Brian Brom, who was a big time recruit and quarterback at Louisville, played there from 2004 to 2007, played a couple times as a quarterback against the University of Miami. I think, that fun shootout game in '04, he was, rotated in. And then Louisville, there was a game between Miami and Louisville up there, I believe in 2006, and I believe Louisville won that game. So he's familiar with this rivalry. Drafted in the second round of the 2008 draft by the Green Bay Packers. This is Jeff's show on offense, but Brian's eyes are certainly trusted up in the booth. The defensive coordinator, the primary play caller is Ron English, one of the better defensive coordinators in the ACC, runs a 4-2-5 type of defense, is known for being aggressive and good on third down. His background is in the secondary. He's been a DC at Michigan. He was previously at Louisville and San Jose State, Purdue, and now he's at Louisville again. Was also a head coach at Eastern Michigan from 2009 to 13. So Louisville stats real quick here on offense, 36 points per game. That's 29th in the country, 404 yards per game. That's 61st. 5.1 yards per play, which is 84th in the country. Passing offense, 289 per game. That's 21st. Rushing offense is 115 yards per game. That's 112th in the country. So that's interesting relative to the talent they do have at the running back spot. 44% on third down. That's 38th nationally. 61% red zone touchdown rate. Not too good. That's 80th in the country. 2.5 sacks per game allowed. That's 111th. 6.4 tackles for loss allowed. That's 115th. 8 turnovers lost. So a lot of negative plays from Louisville this season and not overly explosive. Defensively, on paper, this defense looks like one of the best in the country and one of the best in the ACC, of course. 21 points per game, that's 48th. 262 yards per game, that's 12th. 4.5 yards per play, that's 16th. Number 14, pass efficiency defense. 2.8 sacks per game, 6 interceptions, 111 rushing yards per game allowed, 31% on third down, 50% red zone touchdown allowed. That's 26th in the country. Uh, Louisville's only allowed 13 plays on the year that have gone for at least 20 yards. That's 5th best in the country. So, again, on paper, it's a defense that should be respected. They stop the run, they limit explosive plays, and they win on third down and in the red zone. I think another barometer to look at as it relates to this Louisville defense, Virginia scored at least 31 points in regulation against every team they have faced this year, except for Louisville. Against Louisville, Virginia scored 24 points in regulation. Now, that game went to overtime, and Virginia scored more than that. But it's an interesting barometer because Virginia's offense has been cooking this year. Um, and yeah, just one of the most efficient defenses against the pass in the country as well from Louisville. Special teams, it's a phase that Louisville, has some real strengths. Colin Lacey's averaging 24 yards per punt return. He has 2 punt return touchdowns. They have, they're interesting in the way they use their specialists. They have 2 punters and 2 kickers. Their punters are averaging a combined 39 yards per attempt. Their kickers, they got a long and a short guy, but combined they are 11 of 13 on the year. Their long range kicker, Nick Keller, hit a 57-yarder against Pitt. All right, let's dive into the personnel, the nitty-gritty of it all on offense and defense, Gabby. I'll kind of give you the floor. You've watched quite a bit of Louisville here leading up to this podcast. And let's start with quarterback Miller Moss, who's a veteran guy, transfer from USC. What did you notice about him watching Louisville?
Yeah, I feel like just considering past Louisville quarterbacks, right? I mean, that Miami's played. You go Jack Plummer, and then Tyler Shuck last year. Miller Moss, I feel like is in a similar mold of just like kind of. I guess Tyler Shuck was a little bit more mobile, but Miller Moss definitely seems a little bit more like pocket passery,
Hmm.
not super mobile. Moments, I guess that he can be relatively like elusive and kind of move around in the pocket a little bit, but definitely not someone that I would consider a mobile threat. But again, thrown for over 1,300 yards on the season, 7 touchdowns to 4 interceptions. I believe he has 3 rushing touchdowns on the year too, but I think those are all like kind of short yardage stuff because he has negative 78 rushing yards. Um, but yeah, he's a veteran guy. I mean, he's someone that Lincoln Riley identified a few years back, or maybe it was the staff before that. I'm not sure when exactly, but he played under Lincoln Riley at USC. Was a part of kind of like that big time offense. I think he was supposed to kind of, well, he was the follow up to Caleb Williams. I think USC was maybe having thoughts about whether they were going to go to Miller Moss or maybe go to the portal. And then they actually play against Louisville in a bowl game, and he goes off. I think he threw for like 6 touchdowns in that game. And then I thought it was a pretty natural fit for Miller Moss to kind of come to Louisville and play for Jeff Brom. It felt like that those two just were meant for each other. And I feel like it's been okay. To your point, David, I don't think this offense has been like super overly explosive. Especially in the passing game, they got a couple guys that he has a couple guys that he kind of leans on. Chris Bell and Colin Lacey. We'll get into them a little bit, but Miller Moss for me is just kind of like a drop back passer, and I think for what Miami does on defense, I think it's a good opportunity for Miami's defensive guy, Ruben Bain and Akeem Mesidor to kind of go hunting for sacks and go get after the quarterback and make him uncomfortable. Because I think if you rattle him up and you shake him up and you kind of make him have to do things off platform or off script, I think it can get a little dicey. But to me, he's kind of like a rhythm thrower. I think he kind of makes a decision. He kind of knows where he wants to go with the ball. And if you kind of get his eyes off of that read, I think he tends to struggle when he has to start kind of processing and make a decision. So I think it's a good. I mean, I think it's a good matchup for Miami, truthfully, David. I don't know if you feel the same.
Yeah, I think everything you said is fair and spot on. I think you're right. First read, if it's there, he's accurate and
Yeah.
he gets it out quickly, and it could lead to an explosive because Louisville does have talented receivers that can get yards after catch. But once he has to get off his spot or he has to go to a second read, things get a little bit dicey. And the mobility factor, he's not a total statue, but he's definitely not athletic. And he also makes kind of poor decisions, frankly, when he is being pressured and has to improvise or extend plays. So that's something for the DBs to be aware of as well, is, some pick opportunities
Hmm.
might happen because he is confident and he will force some stuff that he probably shouldn't force. But I would say, okay, Gabby, so if we talk about, Miami's played Louisville 3 straight years now. Jack Plummer was in 2023. Tyler Shuck was last year. And Tyler Shuck was, you know, very good pocket mobility. That guy
Hmm.
could really buy time, extend plays, and he was a good passer when he did extend plays. And now Miller Moss. If you're ranking those three, how would you rank them?
I'd probably go Shuck. I mean, Plummer was 2 years ago, but I think I would probably, just based on what I've seen, I'd probably go Shuck, Plummer, Moss.
I would agree. Yeah, I think that's fair. And Moss might be a little more mobile than Plummer. I don't know. They're pretty similar, but
Yeah, I feel like they're more similar to one another than.
Plummer was more of like a 6'6" pocket passer
Yeah,
though, and he had more arm talent, I feel like,
yeah.
than Moss doesn't have the strongest arm. Do you
Mm-mm.
think that's fair?
Yeah, I think definitely think that's fair.
So, you know, we'll see. Jeff Brom definitely gets the most out of his quarterbacks, and they've had a bye week to figure things out. But I agree. I think this is the third best quarterback Jeff Brom's worked with at Louisville. How about let's stay with the passing operation and
Mhm.
the receivers, the pass catchers he has to work with. Who stands out there to you?
I mean, Chris Bell. I mean, I've been a Chris Bell fan for a while. I know that when we were doing the
Mhm.
projecting transfer portal stuff back in whatever, like Chris Bell's one of the guys I had on there. I feel like people are kind of getting put on to Chris Bell a little bit now. Like I think his name's starting to circulate a little bit more, but like I feel like this is one of the best receivers just like in the country, and no one knows about him. Like no one's talking about this kid, and no one's been talking about him for the past few years. 35 catches, 502 yards, 4 touchdowns. I think he's definitely like the playmaker of this offense. He's the go-to target. Colin Lacey catches a bunch of passes, out of the slot and all that stuff, but Chris Bell is their guy. They go to him a lot in short to intermediate passes, again, because they kind of have to operate quick because, we'll get to their offensive line, but their offensive line stuff is dicey. So, they hit him Miller Moss does a good job getting the ball to him in like back shoulder balls. He does a good job of adjusting to those balls and catching them and making plays. If there is kind of like a deep explosive element, he has like that kind of deep post potential where he can be explosive.
Mhm.
I'm a big Chris Bell fan. He's a big body too. He's like 6'2", 220. He's a load. Chris Bell to me is the guy. And then Colin Lacey just being the slot. He's has been extremely productive over the course of his career. I don't think his Louisville tenure has been quite as productive from an offensive standpoint. You mentioned the punt return. You mentioned the punt return factor that he brings in, and there's a ton of value to that. But Colin Lacey has been he's a steady, solid ACC slot. But for me, Chris Bell's the guy. And then I think it's interesting. Jaleel Skinner, former Miami Hurricane, is their third leading pass catcher, with 137 receiving yards on the year and a short touchdown that he caught. I think it was against Pitt, right? That he caught that little.
Yes.
It just kind of dinked it down to him, and he ran and
Yep.
scored there. So he's kind of found a role at an ACC school where he's been able to fit into a good offense. But yeah, I think as a whole, it's a fine group of receivers. But I think Chris Bell and Colin Lacey are definitely the two at the top that are worthy of kind of just like having the attention.
Hmm. Yeah, Chris Bell, total NFL guy. This year, it seems like the way they use him is a lot on slants in the intermediate
Yep.
area of the field and crossing routes as well,
Hmm.
long crossing routes. So, but yeah, he's a guy that can, if he has a crease on a slant or on a crossing route, he can also take it to the house. So he is a dangerous guy as well. Um, how about the offensive line? Because this is a big key to the game for Louisville, frankly, on offense. Like, I think the success of their offense on Friday night is going to hinge largely on how that unit performs. To this point, what do you think about their offensive line?
It's not good. I'm not. I don't. I think what I saw on tape was just just watching them. I was just like this unit's just not very good. I feel like from a run blocking standpoint, we'll get into Isaac Brown, and the numbers are clearly down a little bit as far as just like the explosiveness. Just what he's doing in general compared to what he was last year. And I watched the ACC games. Like I didn't watch
Yeah.
the James Madison, the Bowling Greens, or Eastern Kentucky. But against ACC teams, I just feel like there wasn't even a lot of lanes for them to go. And I know Isaac Brown's kind of, it seems like he's dealing with a little something. I mean, we'll see how he is against Miami, but still, like I felt like there was just no room for any of these guys to run. I think they struggle from a run blocking standpoint. I think they struggled from a pass pro standpoint. Again, Miller Moss is constantly under duress. It feels like he's kind of playing outside of his comfort zone at times as far as just having to kind of make something out of nothing or not be able to kind of sit back there in the pocket and be as comfortable as he'd like to be back there. Pro Football Focus, again, I think it tells a part of the story. But just watching it, I didn't think it was good. And then saw the Pro Football Focus numbers, and it's just like staggeringly bad. 57.0 pass blocking grade on the season. I believe that's like 109th or something like that. And then 51.7 run blocking grade. That's 117th. So, by those metrics, it's bad and it looks bad when you watch it too. So, not a very impressive offensive line to me personally.
Not overly physical. Would you agree with that?
Yeah,
Like, and
it's just,
they have older guys. Like a lot
yeah,
of their guys have 2000 career snaps. Their transfers in.
yep,
I think their center's pretty good, Niagara, but um, I think their tackles and guards are kind of,
yeah.
there's a lot to be desired there. As it relates to the running back production, right? Isaac Brown, he is a guy that if he has a crease, he can make you
Hmm.
pay. He is a guy that he's probably, Miami's faced some good backs this year. Um, the Notre Dame guys, Florida,
Right.
um, Florida State runs it in a lot of different ways. To me, I'm not going to say Isaac Brown's the best running back Miami's faced because I don't think that's true, but I think he's the most dangerous back if he gets to the second level of a defense because he can house it once he gets to a second level of a defense. But it's something's not right this year. I mean, he's
Hmm.
still he's still averaging 7.3 yards per carry,
Yeah.
but the quantity hasn't been there as he's dealing with some sort of ankle deal.
Yeah, against the ACC teams, he's 26 attempts for 88 yards. He only has one rush for over 10 yards against
Yeah,
conference teams. So yeah, something's definitely up. And again, he has that explosive potential, and he's different than the running backs. Like he's different. He's a different style than like Jeremiah Love or Jadarian Price or Jaden
yeah,
Ball or even like an Usman Kroma, right? Like I think Isaac Brown, like he's more of just like try to just find the crease and go, like just speed
yeah,
back, that's like that home run hitter. And I don't know if he has a lot of like the physicality traits that some of those other guys have. So I think it is interesting because it's a different dynamic as far as just like the player that you're dealing with. And I think another part of just like Louisville struggles, just like even when Isaac Brown's on the game, and I think that it was obvious to me when watching, like if Isaac Brown's on the field during and it's a pass play,
hmm
he's to me he's kind of a huge liability in pass protection. It's
correct.
almost like he's like almost like he's a cone. Like you just kind of just gotta
Yep.
you just get right past him. It's not like he's not providing any resistance in pass pro. So um basically if he's on the field and he's not running the ball, like if he's not like going out for a pass or whatever, I mean it's tough. Like I feel like it's a tough situation because the offensive line's not really giving you a ton of protection, and sometimes Isaac Brown's in a situation which is probably unfair to him, just because that's just not his strong suit, and it can get dicey. So yeah, to me this is an interesting
I
Louisville
feel that way
offense.
about their tight ends too. Like I think that's a great point on Isaac. I think all their running backs,
Yeah,
frankly, struggle
right.
in pass pro. But like Jaleel Skinner is
Hmm.
also not
That was a
physical.
huge problem when he was here too. And it
Yeah,
doesn't look like he's gotten like that much bigger. Like it doesn't
no,
look like he's filled out and gotten thicker or anything like that, which was a concern when Miami got him, right? I think for
yeah,
everyone, he just hasn't filled out. He looks kind of the same, honestly.
yeah,
And so I don't know if to me, there's just not a lot of protection from that standpoint. And so I think it just makes an offense that I think is built to be kind of, I don't know, pro style in some ways. I feel like it's kind of hard to operate sometimes.
yeah,
Because you think of Louisville and you think like, oh, offense, like, at least the offense is going to be right. But I actually have a lot of questions about this offense just because operationally it seems like it's hard for them to do what they want to do. And
yeah.
so,
Year over year, I think it's fair to say like their personnel is weaker
mhm.
everywhere.
And they
Like
had Ja'Cory Brooks last
last year
year.
they had Ja'Cory Brooks. Last year
Yeah.
the tight ends too.
Yeah.
Mark Redmond and Jamari Johnson.
Yeah.
Jamari's at Oregon
Oregon,
now.
yeah, I think he's not starting, but he plays a lot for Oregon.
Um, and then the offensive line, they
Yeah,
had some attrition there
right.
as well year over year. So they're still, they have dangerous guys that you gotta respect, but they're not as well rounded and not as balanced
Hmm.
as they were last year in
Agreed.
a lot of spots. Let's flip it to defense. Again, defensively, this team on paper
Hmm.
gets your attention, right? What about
Definitely.
what about when you actually watch them? Do you feel like they play to that level? What's your take?
Yeah, I mean, I think that they're better on defense than they typically are. Like, I feel like
This might be their third best defense, or sorry, their best defense
yeah,
of the last 3 years.
yeah, of the three
Yeah,
years that Miami's played them, yeah. And I think what stands out to me, it just seems like there's a bunch of older guys all over the place. Like, there's not a lot. Like, it seems like there's just veterans all over. Like these defensive linemen are all transfers who are all older guys. Clev Lubin is a Coastal Carolina transfer. He pops to me on tape. He's got 24 quarterback pressures on the season. Renee Conga's a Rutgers transfer. I think he was on the team last year too, but he's having a great season. I mean, 15 pressures from the interior. They got some guys, Jordan Gerard, an FIU transfer, pause up. Wesley Bailey's another kid from from Rutgers. So they got some older dudes on the defensive line. TJ Quinn, I think is a pretty solid older linebacker. Antonio Watts, a guy on the back end of the defense, I think is a pretty impressive player, and I think he's been there for a while too. So they got some dudes. To me, again, it's just like they have guys, and I think they have some like playmaking potential, and it's again, I think they're a veteran group, but I just think at the end of the day they're just kind of limited. And honestly, I think my big thing with Louisville, which is kind of hard to get, it's just like Pitt's solid. I mean, middle of the pack ACC team. I think at the end of the day, Virginia's solid. I think maybe upper middle of the pack ACC team. Like this Louisville team hasn't really been tested yet, and there's still kind of holes. So, and it's been
Right.
inconsistent. Like there've been periods where they've just played really like they just don't play great football. Like to your point, and then
Yes.
there's times where they look really good. So I just don't know what to make of this Louisville team, this Louisville defense, where the personnel to me isn't bad. Like I honestly like this. I like the personnel of
It's
Louisville's
fine.
defense more than I like the personnel of Florida State's defense. Honestly,
Yes, I agree with that.
I think especially at like the linebacker level and even at the safety level. But yeah, I don't know, man. I don't think that this is a bad defense. I actually think that this is a pretty good, like a probably solid ACC defense. But I don't know if it's anything better than, truly what
One
Miami's seen
thing
already this season.
they've like against Pittsburgh, that's where Eli Holstein got benched,
Yeah,
right? And they either forced him to make bad decisions
yeah.
or
He just
he
made bad
just
decisions.
right.
Pitt just shot themselves on the foot like
And
nine
they took
times that game.
advantage.
Yeah, for sure.
Like honestly, I don't know how many picks did Louisville have in
Yeah.
that game, but
Yeah.
it felt like they could have had five. Like
Yeah, and
they
it
dropped a bunch of picks and
yeah, I think TJ Quinn had a pick, dropped a pick. Antonio
he
Watts
had
made a
two.
great play. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, Antonio Watts made a great play like in the red zone where it's just like just threw up a
Yes.
little balloon and
Nice.
it was a nice play.
Yes.
But just a lot of mistakes on Pitt's end, but to Louisville's credit, they capitalized on
Yeah.
those opportunities to make plays. And I think that they have some of that potential if, they're honestly pretty good they're pretty good in the red zone and like you said on third down too. So again, I think it's an older team that if you give them something, I think they're going to take it. But I don't know if they're like overly just like overwhelmingly
I
talented.
wonder, right. Like I look at the body types and I view them as a defense that is built from a body type perspective to be pretty good against the pass. I wonder if they face a team like Miami who has that ability to get physical in a run game. I wonder how they stand up in
Hmm.
that type of situation. Did you
Yeah.
feel the same way?
Yeah,
Like,
definitely. That's one of my points. We're gonna get into it, but just one of the three
yeah,
things is just like for me, it's just like I want to challenge. I want to challenge that front seven, especially because I don't know how like again they haven't really faced anything that looks quite like Miami yet. So I want to see how they respond when it's not G5 or FCS team, or again, just kind of run of the mill ACC
like
program.
Clev Lubin is their, pass rusher,
Hmm.
right? Coastal Carolina transfer, and he's good. But like to me, he's more of like the slippery college edge rusher rather than a guy that's going to, flash athleticism
Hmm.
or beat you with his length and body
Yeah,
type. He's kind of that 6'2", 250
tries
guy,
hard.
tries hard, which matters.
Right.
Motor does matter. But he's like technique guy, like he's gonna use his hands well and slip past you. And that will work. He will absolutely get some pressures on Miami. Um, but like, you know, this defense on paper might be the best that Miami will have played to this point. But to me, it's the third or fourth best defense Miami's played to this point. So we'll see. Um, the secondary does have length.
Hmm.
I don't think they're overly physical. And the linebacker level is really good in coverage. So that I do think that that's one thing to keep an eye on where,
Yeah.
they can pop up and make plays in
Hmm.
coverage, that secondary, or sorry, that linebacker level. So,
Lost
um,
Quincy Riley. I mean, that's a big loss for them on the outside that I think they're
yes,
kind of missing a little bit.
yes. And even last year, like Cleve Lubin's good, but like he's not Ashton Gelati.
Mm-mm.
Would you agree with that?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
He's definitely not Ashton Gelati.
So, uh, this is a, you know, decently well-rounded ACC team, and this type of talk might get us, might make us put our foot in our mouth later. But Like to me, this is still probably Miami's toughest test for the rest of the schedule. Would you disagree with that? Like
No,
SMU also,
yeah, I think
SMU has
SMU,
that road element.
right? The road element. I still think Pitt at the end of the year could be interesting,
Yeah,
especially as this quarterback kind
it's
of gets
those
his
three
legs under them.
games.
Yeah, but this is, I mean, this is the next toughest one. As we kind of just continue churning through the schedule. Like to your point, I think there's three real roadblocks and like remaining, and I think like this is one of them. But I also feel like this is a situation that Miami should still handle business pretty, well.
Yeah. All right, let's take a quick break, and then on the other side, we'll talk a bit about this game from a Miami perspective. All right, Gabby, three things we want to see from Miami in this game. Floor is yours.
Yeah, for me, I mean, just it's just dominate the line of scrimmage, right? Like I think that that's gonna probably be one of those things that we want to see from Miami or expect to see from Miami the rest of the point of throughout the rest of the season. But this is a Friday night, standalone game, nighttime,
Spooky.
ESPN. Yeah, these games get weird, right? Florida State went
Yep.
up to a few Friday nights ago. Florida State went up to Virginia as a top 10 team and lost, right? So these Friday nights can be weird. Obviously, Miami's at home. You don't have that road travel element. But I think one thing that travels, or just, I think one thing that's just be a mainstay of why Miami should win every game on the rest of their schedule is because they should have a significant line of scrimmage advantage against every team they play from this point out. I think it's no different in this Louisville game, but you want to just see that show up. And I think that's one of those areas where it's hard to kind of hide. I think for Louisville, it's kind of hard to overcome that too. So I just want to see that be a prominent theme in this game. It's just Miami is just too much up front on both sides of the ball for this Louisville to kind of navigate and manage. And so that's one of the things I would like to see in this one.
Yeah, I agree. It needs to be a bloodbath on the line of scrimmage, frankly, and
Yeah.
I think there's a high probability that it will be. One thing for me, look, this Louisville offense, I think the numbers are fair relative to what your eyes tell you when you watch them, but they do have explosive potential.
Hmm.
And so, I do wonder like Isaac Brown, fully healthy, highly motivated South Florida,
Yeah. Homecoming.
correct,
Miami didn't recruit him.
correct. So he's going to be motivated, et cetera, et cetera. Chris Bell, explosive receiver. Colin Lacey can explode on you as well with touchdowns. You can't let those guys score an explosive touchdown. They're going to get explosive plays on you. Like Isaac Brown scored a 43-yard touchdown in last year's game.
Hmm.
Colin Lacey scored a 100-yard kick return in last year's
Yeah.
game. Um, so I would just say, this is obvious, but don't make it easy on this Louisville team, allowing them to score from outside the red zone against Virginia and Pittsburgh. Um, they scored one time in those two games from outside the red zone. They really hit a bunch of explosives the rest of their schedule, and really once Louisville gets inside the red zone, they kind of settle for a lot of field goals. They are only a 61% red zone touchdown rate, which is not great. So, maybe you can allow like one explosive touchdown in this game, but anything more than that, and it kind of plays into Louisville's hands as to, making this a somewhat chaotic type of game.
Yeah, I'm with you. And that was my next point. So, I mean, to touch on that. I mean, just even, and I think it really just comes down to those three guys we talked about, right? Like it's Isaac Brown, it's Isaac Brown, it's Chris Bell, and it's Colin Lacey. I mean, those three guys have accounted for over 1,100 yards and seven touchdowns. That's more than half of Louisville's total offense on the season is just from those three guys and just what they've been able to produce. So I think it just comes to limiting if you want to basically eradicate those explosive plays or limit them, it comes down to just limiting those three players specifically. I think if you put a handle on those situations, and that's challenging, right? Like, those guys are good players and they're going to get theirs, but I think it comes down to just kind of really containing and focusing on those three players. And if you do that, I think Miami will have, um, you know, good success as far as just that.
The other thing, I think that's important this week is just handling the aggressive approach that they're going to see from Jeff Brom this week. You watch his weekly press conference leading up to this game, and you can tell like he kind of knows in this game he's outmanned. Like he knows like Miami has the better team. So he's gonna have to pick and choose his spots on when to be aggressive, both on offense, defense, and special teams. So I would expect him to go for it quite a bit on fourth down when those opportunities come up. I'd expect him to try and sell out and heat up Carson Beck into bad decisions. He's had a bye week to prepare, and he's going to bring some stuff out that is going to put Miami in a pretzel from time to time. And look, Louisville's going to have success in some of those situations, but it's important mentality wise for Miami to keep playing hard, don't lose confidence. I feel like in hindsight, Gabby, in both those games. Like Jeff Brom destroyed Miami's confidence on defense in both those games the last 2 years. And really he kind of gave the blueprint at the end of that 2023
Hmm.
season as to how to just dice up the Lance Guidry
Yep.
defense, going into 2024. So he can dial it up. He definitely his personnel isn't quite to the level I think as it has been the last 2 years. But he's going to come at Miami, and he has experience performing well in these type of games. Like Purdue played Ohio State tough when he was there, etc. So he's a guy that knows in order to win these games, you got to come out and attack the opponent. And so hopefully Miami's just ready for that coming off a bye.
Yeah, and it's interesting too, just even Corey Heatherman's, early in he's been excellent so far, but Jeff Brom is like as you've mentioned, a veteran play caller, a highly experienced guy on the offensive side of the ball. And, to your point, like, he did kind of unleash the blueprint on Lance Guidry, and that carried over into the 2024 season. And obviously that went extremely poorly. But I think that's a little game within the game too, just how Corey Heatherman responds to someone like Jeff Brom, who is extremely experienced in play calling and just a bright offensive mind, who's had a week to prepare too. Two teams often at this time
Right.
of year do two, or is it two teams that are kind of coming off a bye? Usually that's kind of like an advantage, but not really.
Miami's had an advantageous bye week schedule. I mean, you'd always like to have a bye in November,
Yeah,
but like you get 2 weeks to prepare for Gus
yeah,
and 2 weeks to prepare for Jeff
yeah.
Brom. Like that's pretty good.
Yeah, no, for sure. And this is a good matchup to have time to prepare for it.
Yeah.
Because again, you win this one, and yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, I think it's
It lines
arguable
up
that
well.
this, yeah, exactly. I mean, I think you put yourself in a really good spot, and there's other big ACC matchups this week too, where the conference can kind of bloody itself a little bit. So it would be good, you win this one and you're coasting, hopefully for the most part. But yeah, for me, and I kind of mentioned this on the front half, just challenging. I'm just curious how Miami chooses to like challenge that Louisville front seven, just because
Hmm.
with this running game, this big offensive line, we know who Miami is on
They
offense,
should lean
and
on him.
yeah, I think this is one of those games where and it's kind of like a pick your point. And I think the thing about this that we know now is just the way Miami has answers, right?
Yeah.
Like they have answers in this offense, but I think that this is a game where you want to make it kind of physical for Louisville because I don't like again, I think this is one of those things where it's just like you're just going to outman them. And I think you can just kind of make it bloody early and then you can just kind of start opening it up. But I think you need to kind of come out and punch them in the mouth because I think that defense, again, is older guys. And I think they're going to come out hot and confident and wanting to kind of make a statement. And I think you got to set the tone early. And I think you do that by just lining it up and making this a physical type of game. And I think if you start finding success with that, it'll be, I think it'll be kind of over, or I think it has a chance to be kind of over early, or you can just kind of take control early and then kind of do what you do on offense. But yeah, I am interested to see how Miami kind of comes out and handles that front seven and how they attack them.
I do think there's a good chance Louisville stacks the box
Hmm.
and, wants either Miami to run it into a stacked box or, win on the outside. So
Yeah.
um, it'll be an interesting game within the game. How about a matchup you like most going into this game?
Yeah, I'm gonna take the low-hanging fruit, David. I'll
Yeah.
let you just the Miami defensive line versus Louisville's offensive line. I
Hmm.
think that that's a significant mismatch.
Hmm.
And, I think that comes with expecting a lot of maybe like quick game and screens and things like that from the Louisville offense. And again, I'm curious how Jeff Brom schemes that part of it up, how he tries to mask that kind of wart on their offensive line against this Miami defensive line. He was extremely praiseworthy of, or just praising Miami's defensive line, saying how talked to Florida and they said that was the best defensive line they've seen in 3 or 4 years or what have it. So, I think he knows what, to your point, I think he knows what's coming. And I'm curious to see how he tries to navigate that obvious mismatch.
Yeah, I'm with you. In terms of like a matchup to keep an eye on from a concern standpoint, again, it just kind of goes back to Jeff Brom coming off a bye. And I feel like, there's going to be like 5 times during the course of the game where we're watching Louisville's offense and we're going to turn to each other and be like, wow, that was a beautifully schemed up play design there that Louisville either hits on or doesn't hit on. But he's had a week to get ready for Miami's defense, and he's going to find some pressure points to try and work, Miami's defense and expose and again, to your point earlier, like I am curious what he feels like he can expose with this Miami defense because it's been a well-rounded defense to this
Hmm.
point. But a guy like Jeff Brom can still find some stuff that can, get dicey at times. The area I would say I'm looking at, based off 2 years of evidence, last 2 seasons against Louisville and what he's done, he does has picked on Miami's linebackers in coverage kind of in a big way. Particularly with the tight end production and the running back, pass catching production. In 2024, he targeted those positions in the passing game 20 times. They had 14 catches for 82 yards and 2 touchdowns. That doesn't sound like a lot in terms of yardage, but it's a lot of situational stuff. It's a lot of red zone. Like in the red zone, he works that tight end.
Yeah.
And in 2023, it was 13 receptions for 144 and 2 touchdowns. Those position groups picked up 11 first downs. And, I feel like Gabby, once a game, like Mo Torre is kind of good for some shakiness and
Yep.
coverage. Notre Dame's taken advantage of it with an explosive. Florida State took advantage of it on that first drive
Yep.
of the game with an explosive. Other teams, it's been there, but they haven't hit on it at times. And so I'm curious if Brom just finds ways to constantly pick at that, et cetera, or if Motori cleans that up. So, but again, too, I think it's worth highlighting this tight end position group is the weakest, I think, that Jeff Brom has had of the 3 years that he's now faced Miami. So, I think Jaleel Skinner can glide across the field, but like, I don't think he's as good as the tight ends they've had here in recent years. What about you? Like a matchup you're keeping an eye on?
Yeah. I mean, for me, I just think Chris Bell is the real deal. So I think just
Yeah.
him against whichever outside corner. Yeah, I'm assuming it'll be like an OJ Frederic or
Yeah.
maybe Xavier Lucas. But look, I mean, again, this is like an older veteran receiver. I think he brings something different to the table than some of these other guys that they've kind of played this season. So, okay, just with the way he can be explosive. I mean, he has 20, he's caught 35 passes this season. 26 of them have been for first down. So he's a guy that just finds a
Yeah.
way to move the sticks. I think they can kind of force feed him in a way that he can handle it, not because like
14 targets the last 2 weeks.
yeah, I mean, I think it was, I get the Virginia and the Pitts games because I watched, but like
Virginia
those.
game, he had like 86 yards in the first quarter.
Yeah, okay, so it
Yeah.
was a Virginia game. I was like, it just felt like every pass was it's just straight at Chris Bell. It's just straight at
Yeah.
Chris Bell. So like they can use him to just kind of go, and again, it might not be the 20-yard explosive touchdown or whatever it is, like, but he can just 8 or 9 yard you straight down the field and just go on those back shoulders, on
To
those
me,
slants, on those digs, all that stuff.
so the next section player that needs to step up, I'm going with OJ Frederic for
Yeah,
this reason.
yeah.
To me, this is a man coverage game, like man cover, because you don't really need to worry about Miller Moss scrambling on you.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? Man coverage, OJ Frederic on Chris Bell. And look, Chris Bell's going to win some of
Hmm.
those snaps. But if I'm OJ Frederic, I'm playing, outs, I'm leveraging everything to the outside. I'm not letting him beat me on slants or crossers. or if he does, I'm making it very physical and throwing off that timing. And if he beats me downfield outside the numbers, tip your cap and move on to the next play. But to me, for all these reasons, like to me, OJ Frederick is the player that needs to step up. Who would you
Yeah.
highlight?
Yeah, wrote something down different, but then I heard you talking about the linebackers and coverage, and now I'm thinking like, Wesley Bissaint, Motori, one of those guys, because it feels like that's definitely somewhere that, Louisville can kind of take advantage. But um, initially I kind of went with just like the interior alignment, just like a Nez Cooper, someone that's just like as far as just like becoming again just that running
Yeah,
game and just establishing that. Like I think we just need to get if we're nitpicking this offensive line, I think we need to get a little bit more from Inez, and I think there's a
yeah,
different gear that he can kind of hit. Um,
I
and
agree.
just as an older guy who I feel like at this point of his career, and I think especially against like this level of competition, I think we should kind of start to see him take that next step. I don't know if he's like fully taken it yet, but I
I
I,
agree.
I want to see a little bit more from him as far as just even as just like run game push stuff, like just be the bigger guy, be the more physical
Yep.
guy, and help Miami just kind of really establish that kind of ground and pound stuff, especially in these short yardage situations, or if this is who you want to be. Like I do think we can get more out of Inez Cooper, and so he's someone that kind of came to mind.
How about potential player of the game?
Potential player of the game. I'm just gonna take the low-hanging fruit, man. Ruben Bain against
Yeah,
against this type of quarterback, against that level of offensive tackles. Like
he
he
could
just,
pile up sacks. Like,
yeah, he could. This could be a stat padding game.
yeah,
He's done it obviously big with the pressures and all that stuff, and I think this could be one of those games where you start to see the actual like, not that he hasn't been productive, but you can see it on the stat sheet as far as like the tackles for loss and the sacks and all that stuff. I mean, really him or Mesidor could both
yeah.
have big games, just a matter of who gets to the quarterback first. So, I'm curious to see how many opportunities, especially if Miami starts to kind of build out a lead and Louisville doesn't really have a choice but to kind of start dropping back and passing, and they have to
Right.
kind of get out of like their early identity of what they want to be and want to do. Um, I think Ruben Baines is, I think this is like a feast potential game for him.
I'm gonna go Jordan Lyle, running back.
Ooh, okay.
I just think it'd be good to get him
Yeah,
going. So I'm kind of
agreed.
just manifesting this into
Yeah,
existence.
let's
And
do it. Here
you
for
know,
that.
I think it'd be nice to get that element, explosive run game element going a little bit here at the start of ACC play. All right, prediction time. Miami is, last I looked, Gabby, a 13.5 point favorite. So that's a big line for a
Huge.
conference
Yep.
game. Over under 51.5. So it's a big line, relatively low
Yeah.
scoring game, to that big line. What's your prediction for the game?
Yeah, dude, I think I'm taking the under, and I think I'm laying the points with Miami. That's a bit,
Okay.
that again, that is a big line. I just, man, I feel like for me, Louisville's just been too inconsistent for me to feel like it's just going to all suddenly click in a game where I think it's just a different level of competition compared to what they've kind of seen in the past. I think the bye week is obviously a tough thing to kind of factor in as far as just like what version we're going to see. But to me, it's been too up and down for me to kind of for me to feel like this is going to be as close as it could be or much closer than that. I'm going
Right.
to go 34-14. Miami wins. That's 20-point win. That's probably maybe a little big, but I do feel like there's just some overwhelming potential in this, and I think to me there's enough weapon there with me there's too many questions with Isaac Brown as far as both the health and just ability to even find those creases. I think
Hmm.
there's answers kind of knowing who their guys are, and I think just like the limited amount of production you get from the guys around them, you can kind of focus in, narrow in. I think Louisville's going to have some tough sledding on offense, especially with their line and Miami's defensive line, and then I think Miami's offense is going to do what they do. Again, I think 34 is pretty, standard, or just like, that range I think is always just a typical Miami game type of deal. I know I guess they've been high 20s, um, mid to high 20s. I think they get into low 30s. I think that's the range that they can kind of live in, especially just during ACC play. I think this is where we should expect to see them. So yeah, I think Miami just to me this is just like kind of a Miami handling business type of game on a Friday night. Nice little 2-3 score win for the Hurricanes.
Yeah, I'll say Miami 38, Louisville 23. I think this is just an advantageous matchup for Miami. I think they're the much better team on the line of scrimmage. Louisville quarterback, struggles operating under pressure and isn't the most mobile. I think Miami can win this game, either way offensively, whether they, can just lean on the run game or if they have to pass it, I think that won't be an issue either. Um, you know, I think it's going to be, now if Louisville gets some explosives on them, that's a different dynamic and a different flow of the game. But to this point, coming into the game, watching both teams, Miami is kind of the better team in every phase. So we'll see how it all plays out. I appreciate everyone for listening. Miami starts that ACC grind now, 7 games in 7 weeks, and we'll see how they navigate this schedule. So appreciate everyone for listening. Keep checking out InsideTheU.com. Go support the sponsors. And until next time, take care.